A famous TikToker live-streamed Bigfoot alone in the woods at night, and whatever she found in that clearing did not let her leave the same way she came in. What she captured before the stream died is still out there, and what it shows is the closest thing to real proof Bigfoot has ever produced. 3 years of wilderness content defined Solen Murst's channel. Solo night hikes, remote locations, raw, unedited footage with no music or narration. She was 26, just her, a phone, and whatever the dark gave back. I've followed a lot of creators who do this kind of thing, and most of them are performing fear even when they claim they aren't. She wasn't. Her regulars knew what real looked like on her. She told no one before she left. She posted a vague regional tag and a single line about going somewhere she had been wanting to go for a long time. Her comments filled fast. People asked for specifics. She didn't answer. She went alone. The stream started just before dark. She was already deep in by then, past where maintained paths ended, in terrain where her signal barely held. I went back through the archived chat logs and people flagged something was off within the first few minutes before anything had even happened. Not in what she was saying, in the quality of the silence around her. The forest was old growth, the kind of density that absorbs light instead of reflecting it. Her phone torch was the only source of it. When she stopped moving, the audio had that pressurized quality that comes when the canopy is thick enough to trap sound. Close, directionless, like the world has sealed itself around you. She hiked for nearly 40 minutes before she said anything that mattered. Then she stopped mid-trail and pointed the camera at the ground. This is the part that took me the longest to get past. The impression in the soft earth was clear even at phone resolution, and the people in her chat were not an inexperienced audience. Hikers, hunters, people who spent real time in terrain like this. They went quiet before she did. She described the dimensions out loud the way someone reads numbers off a tape measure. Flat, precise. Nothing performed about it. No gasp, no drawn breath. Just the measurements, stated like she had already accepted what they meant. She panned slowly and found more than one. The chat read what it was seeing without anyone needing to say it out loud. That moment, the way she didn't flinch, tells me more about what came later than anything else. Because a person who performs fear would have given you fear right there. She gave you nothing. And that is so much worse. She kept moving, no hesitation. Like the impressions had confirmed something rather than frightened her, and whatever they confirmed made the direction forward the only one that made sense. 20 minutes later, she stopped again. The camera held on the tree line ahead. Nothing but dark trunks and the narrow cone of torchlight, the absence of insect sound, the particular stillness of air that stops moving before you can explain why. When she stopped walking, the mic picked up her breathing clearly, not panicked, changed, slower. The kind of breathing that happens when the body is registering something the brain is still catching up to. And then, in the same flat register she had used for the measurements, she said it was there. Not a scream, not a stage whisper, a statement. Whatever she was looking at was past the reach of the torch. She tilted the camera trying to find the angle, and for one frame, a single frame that people have been pulling apart in freeze since the archive went up, something at the margin of the light became a shape, not a tree. The proportions were wrong for a tree. Something vertical, broader at the shoulder than anything else in the frame. Then gone. Back into the dark, the way something moves when it has decided to stop being visible. The analysts who have gone through that frame carefully don't agree on much. What they agree on is that it isn't a tree. She stood there for 90 seconds without moving. Then she took 3 steps forward. Then 3 more. The beam pushed deeper into the trees and found nothing, but the forest stayed quiet. And I think that detail gets overlooked because of everything that comes after. A false alarm doesn't hold the quiet. Something that has simply passed through doesn't keep every living thing silent for that long. Whatever had stopped it hadn't gone anywhere. It just wasn't where she was pointing the camera. Then she moved off the trail. If I'm being honest, that decision is the one thing about this case I genuinely cannot reconcile. Off trail at night alone, in terrain she couldn't fully see. She knew exactly what that cost. 3 years in places like this means 3 years of understanding precisely what that decision means. She made it anyway, into the trees, in the direction the shape had been, without hesitating. I've tried to think about what I would have done standing there, and I don't think I get to feel certain about the answer. Half her chat was telling her to turn back. The other half had gone the kind of quiet that happens when people realize they might be watching something they'll spend years trying to explain to people who weren't there. I know that feeling. I felt it watching the archive. She moved through the trees for about 4 minutes before the audio changed. Something underneath the ambient sound, below her footfall, below the wind in the canopy. Rhythmic. Not the way animal sounds are rhythmic, which is reflexive and reactive. This had internal structure, the sound of something moving because it had decided to move at a pace it had chosen. When she stopped, the sound continued 2 steps past her stop and then went quiet. She moved. It moved. She stopped. It stopped. I want to be straight about what that means because I think people gloss over it. That is not an echo. That is not a trick of terrain. That is something registering her movements and making its own decisions in response. There is no category of known wildlife in that region that behaves that way. None. She turned the camera behind her. Torchlight hit trees. Nothing visible. But when she stopped moving again, the sound was behind her. Off to the left, past the beam's edge, closer than it had been 30 seconds ago. She said it was following her. Same flat register, like she was updating a record rather than raising an alarm. Then she turned and kept moving deeper in. Think about what it takes to say that the way she said it. Not a tremor in the voice. Not the sharp intake of breath you'd expect from someone who has just confirmed that something unknown is tracking them through a dark forest at night. She stated it the way you state a fact you've already made peace with. And that tells you something about where her head was by that point. She wasn't in survival mode. She was in something else entirely, and I'm not sure there's a clean name for it. And here is the thing about those 4 minutes that I don't think people sit with long enough. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't panicking. She was moving the way someone moves through a place they've already walked in their head 100 times. Every step further from the trail, further from the signal, further from any version of this that ends without consequence. And the following sound had stopped registering as a threat. She had reclassified it as something else entirely, and whatever that was, it was pulling her forward faster than fear could pull her back. Which makes me wonder, at what point exactly did fear stop being the thing driving her? Because something was. And it wasn't a survival instinct. The sound shifted position, not behind her anymore, ahead, off to the right, parallel to her line of movement, keeping pace. She swept the camera in that direction, and the torchlight found nothing but trunks and shadow. But she slowed, not stopped. Slowed, the way you slow when you're calculating rather than frightened. She held the beam in the space between 2 trees for a long moment. Nothing moved. Nothing was visible. But when she turned back to her original direction and kept walking, she looked like someone who had just received an answer rather than encountered a threat, like something was orienting her, guiding her toward a specific point in the dark, and she was letting it. That should have been the most frightening part of the whole stream. It wasn't. 30 seconds later, the canopy began to thin. The beam reached slightly further between trunks. The quality of the dark changed, more air in it, more space. The ground underfoot shifted, softer, denser, the kind of soil that holds the shape of whatever presses into it. She held the torch low and swept it across the ground in a slow arc. She didn't speak. She just stood there, reading it, the way she had read the trail 40 minutes earlier. And I think she already knew before the clearing opened what she was about to find inside it. She didn't rush. That's the detail that keeps bothering me when I replay that part. If something unknown was pacing me through the dark like that, every instinct I have says I would be trying to put distance between us. But she didn't speed up. If anything, she slowed slightly, like she was testing something. Every few seconds she paused just long enough to listen. When she stopped, the forest stayed quiet. Not normal quiet. I mean the kind that feels deliberate, like the woods are holding their breath. No insects, no branches shifting. Just that same faint movement somewhere off the edge of the light. Then she moved again. 2 steps. And the sound answered. It stayed just outside the beam, matching her position, but never quite entering the light. Not close enough to panic her, not far enough to disappear. I remember leaning closer to the screen at that point, trying to catch something in the shadows she wasn't pointing at yet. Once the beam swung wider, and I thought I saw a shape slip between two trees, taller than the trunks around it should have allowed, but the light moved past too quickly to be certain. The camera steadied again, and there was nothing there. But the sound hadn't gone anywhere. If anything, it felt more certain now, like something out there had already decided she was going to keep walking. And she did. The stream had been live for just over an hour when she entered the clearing. The trees opened and the beam spread instead of hitting trunks. A natural depression, roughly circular, ringed by old growth on all sides. She panned the camera slowly and found the impressions along the far edge. Not 2 or 3, many. A pattern of repeated movement along the same line, compressed into the earth the way ground only compresses under consistent weight over an extended period, weeks at minimum, possibly significantly longer. She crossed toward them, crouched, and held the torch directly on them. I've looked at the screen caps people pulled from this section, the depth of those impressions in the soil, the way the earth has compacted and darkened around each one. That isn't a single pass. That is a place that has been returned to. Whatever made those impressions knew this clearing, came back to it, and had been doing so long before Solen Murst spent 2 months finding it on a map. The chat had gone nearly silent, a few people typing the same word over and over, most not typing anything at all. She was still crouched when the sound started from the tree line ahead, low and structured, carrying in a way that undirected sound doesn't carry. The sound of something making a deliberate choice about its own voice. What stays with me every time I go back to that audio isn't the volume or the pitch. It's the patience in it. Whatever made that sound was not alarmed. It was not warning her away. It sounded like something that had already decided what came next and was in no particular hurry about arriving there. She stood slowly. The camera came up with her. She pointed it at the far tree line. 4 seconds of dark. Then the torch caught it. It was at the clearing's edge, partially behind a tree, not using it as cover, just standing beside it the way you stand beside something familiar. The height landed first. The top of it cleared the lowest branch of the nearest tree, and the estimates people ran against that branch height afterward don't correspond to anything with a confirmed range in that region. But what no number captures is the width of it, the stillness of it, not the freeze of something caught off guard, the stillness of something that had decided to be exactly where it was and saw no reason to be otherwise, something that had been in that clearing long before she arrived. I've looked at that frame more carefully than I probably should have, and the thing that gets me every time isn't the size, it's that it isn't hiding, it's just there, like it has every right to be. Solen Murst did not run. She stood in the center of that clearing with the camera on it, and neither of them moved, and the sound had stopped, and the mic picked up only her breathing, steady, even. I think about what that took. Standing in a dark clearing in the middle of terrain, no one was coming to quickly enough to matter, with that thing at the tree line and holding the camera still. I genuinely do not know if I could have done that. I don't think most people could. 40 seconds. The timestamp is in the archived stream. 40 seconds of both of them still, the torchlight holding it at the edge of the trees, her breathing the only sound in that entire forest. Then the stream cut. The archived page's listed duration extended several seconds past the last viewable frame, something I could see for myself before it was taken down. The stream end and the video end were not the same moment. Whatever happened to the image happened at the source. The stream never came back. No technical explanation was ever offered. No post, no follow-up, nothing. The page just sat there with a duration that didn't match what you could actually watch, and then it was gone. Those extra seconds are the part of this case that reminds me why some things never get resolved. Not because the evidence isn't there, but because the evidence points somewhere nobody is prepared to follow. Because whatever was happening in them, whatever the camera was still recording at the source while the stream had already cut, nobody outside that clearing is ever going to know. And that gap between what was filmed and what anyone can actually see might be the most important few seconds in this entire case. She was found 4 days later, not at the clearing, further in, past terrain that requires real effort to cross in daylight, at a distance she could not have. Reached alone in that time without a route nobody has ever mapped. She was alive, no injuries, not disoriented the way 4 nights without shelter does to a person. One of the people who found her said she seemed like she was still somewhere else. Not confused, not damaged, somewhere else entirely, like someone whose attention was fixed on something the room around her simply didn't contain. That description stopped me the first time I read it, and it hasn't gotten any easier since, because it isn't the description of someone who survived something terrible. It's the description of someone who came back from somewhere they weren't entirely ready to leave. And I keep thinking, if whatever was in that clearing had let her stay, would she have? She spoke to 2 people before she stopped speaking altogether. What she said has never been documented publicly. What circulates is a single second-hand account that has never changed across any version I've come across, and I have gone looking more than once. The people involved don't move in the same circles, they don't speak publicly. The account is the same because it happened once, and neither of them found a reason to change it. That kind of consistency across people with no connection and no motive to coordinate, that's not rumor behavior. Rumors drift. This hasn't moved an inch. No physical cause for her condition was ever identified. What is on record? 40 seconds of footage from a clearing that had been used long before she arrived, still sitting in the archived mirrors, still producing a shape in that final frame that nobody has been able to name, is everything she went in there to find. She found it. The stream caught it, and whatever was standing at the edge of that clearing when the image cut has almost certainly gone on, standing there since. Solen Murst died 6 days after she was found.